Good morning. It's about 9 a.m. It is actually exactly 9 a.m. winter time in Ireland, and it's damp. The trees are damp. The grass is wet. There's dampness in the air. It's not that cold. I'd say it's about 9 degrees, maybe. I'm guessing that now, but uh, you wouldn't live in a house easily. You might stay in bed in a house, but when you get up, if you didn't have some form of heating, which I have here, you'd have vapor on your breath, and you'd see that vapor on my breath, and also it would be cold. So it's nice and warm where I am here because of fossil fuel heating. Anyway, this is about the position with Europe and Ukraine and all of that. And there's a thing called the European Council. And this is totally different from the Council of Europe or the Council of Ministers. Council of Ministers is where the ministers of the various countries come together and make decisions. But the European Council is a non-elected, they call it a collegiate of, of people. The exact number of them, I don't know. They're not elected, they're not accountable to anybody. And they form the direction of European policy. Now, we saw in the United States where President Trump has brought out a document on the national security strategy, and that is led by the president, by the elected president, and his cabinet and the Congress approval, almost certainly, I think, on that. But anyway, in the European Council, there's none of that at all. These are a body that sit aside, and it could be that they are a part of the reasons why decisions are made which are outside of the democratic process. Just be aware of them anyway. European Council. You can Google them if you want. Now, they've brought out the latest thing, which is to put sanctions on 59 people who they don't approve of. They quote whatever they want, they can say what they want, and these sanctions involve complete removal of credit cards, complete shutdown, and taking the money out of any bank accounts, prevention of travel within the EU, you can't board a plane anywhere in the EU, cancellation of passports, complete ostracization of the citizen. Now, not all of these are in the EU, so many of them are outside. One guy is in Russia. He's some kind of a military man. He lives in Russia, but he has European or American connections, and he's on the list. But it doesn't bother him because he lives in Russia. There'll be a certain amount all over. Their exact names, I don't know yet. But one of them is a lady called Natalie Yum, Yumb, Yum, and she is a Swiss. I think she is a Swiss. One parent is Swiss, the other is Cameroon. And she has been involved in a bit of campaigning, and she would be supporting the move that's taking place in West Africa to move away from colonial past. And this has been happening in Burkina Faso and Mali there, and Nigeria, and it is definitely a big problem for Europe and for France, which was getting a lot of its raw materials and had its influence there until quite recently. Now, I've dealt with this in videos. Victoria Nuland went into one of those countries and they didn't entertain her at all. So this is a big worry, but this lady has been pushing this along with other stuff. Now, the country of the Ivory Coast was instrumental in influencing the European Council to sanction her. And there's no redress to any court, no redress to anything. There's nothing can be done, nothing. For the person outside of Europe, it only has the inconvenience of not being able to use European facilities and go to Europe and all of that. So if you're in Canada, you're not so bad, or in America. But if you're in Europe, you can't get even a euro to buy a piece of food. So that's the way it's going. Now, there are many commentators there, and it's going to be interesting to see how the YouTube videos, which is the main platform for all of this local and international and different alternative news, are going to be treated. And I will personally have to be very careful on that, because a lot of other fish I can fry without going into this, and there are many other big players there. But I can foresee a situation where many of these will be banned. Don't forget, they have fined Elon Musk 120 million because he didn't approve of what he did. Rightly or wrongly, don't bother going there, but it's a side issue for now. So that's the story there. There are those who are saying we're witnessing some type of an earthquake within the European Union. I mean, 3 of the countries did not even agree to they wouldn't agree to take in the Russian funds, but they also wouldn't agree to being liable for loans, for bonds raised to pay Ukraine 90 billion euros. So there's a fracture straight away. There's also reports of a huge fracture between Chancellor Merz and Macron. Macron has now suggested talking to Russia, and Russia has said they'll talk to him. So this is totally against the German way of looking at it. So you know my view on Germany, because the reason I have the view on Germany is we had a First World War, we had a Second World War, and certainly whatever the rights and wrongs were, the behaviour during the Second World War was reprehensible to most people. I'm sure you agree. And I have made it clear that that Nazi way of thinking is prevalent in Germany and is prevalent in Ukraine. And Chancellor Merz, he was the former leader of BlackRock, one of the biggest financial institutions in the world. And they're getting a bit of a knock as well. So you have big players there that we would never have a chance of getting the power they have. And when we elect a government or a politician, they have the tools to toe them into line and make them do what they have to. The exception, of course, is the states of Hungary, is it Serbia, and the Czech Republic. Anyway, we leave that for now. We just have to be careful. It's big strain. There is big strain in Europe. Big strain. That's all you need to know from me. And I think I'll park it up and leave it and see how things are going. I have spent 10 years trying to tell them, as a good European citizen, that their green energy and their climate change policies wouldn't work. And I'm proven right. I think, is it 4 to stop making electric vehicles altogether? The EU has removed the ban on petrol and diesel vehicles. I mean, everything I said is coming to pass because their grandiose plans are being hit with a dose of reality. And if there had been no conflict with Russia, this would go on. Number one, climate change. But now they have this problem. And you see, that's the way things go. There's always another priority or another emergency. Now, in the recent past, there was a Russian general killed in Moscow. And Ukraine has made it clear that they have operatives operating in Moscow. You think they'd keep it quiet, but he was killed by a car bomb. And they've been doing that all the time. So it looks like the Russian-Ukrainian countryside and cities are quite open. People often remark that. People have gone to Ukraine and remarked that you'd never know there's a war on. That's the funny thing about it. And I have bought a little item, a little tool I wanted from Ukraine. It wasn't that good a quality. It was good enough and it was great, very cheap in the last 6 months. So they still have industry going there. Now, the thing is, in addition to killing the general, the Ukraine has come along and they've reportedly bombed and damaged a bridge in Moscow, and that they've killed civilians there in that attack. This is a report. Now, there's another very good report that they've actually got a lorry loaded with drones. Loads of drones, and the lorry was pulled up along a road somewhere near the target in Moscow, and the roof was pulled back, and they could be remotely controlled, operated by people in Ukraine, and they're able to fly the drone, and they attacked Russian nuclear airplanes on the tarmac. Now, these I understand, and again, you have to give me a certain amount of license because I'm just doing the best I can. I'm not over there. These, or there was the START treaty meant that these had to be left out in the open so that both countries, Russia and the United States, could see what they were doing. And it was part of the idea of preventing a misunderstanding, so that if they were going to actually bomb somewhere like America, uh, it would be clear. It wouldn't be a mistake. It wouldn't be a mistake. It would be the real thing. So that's why they're there. But that's my understanding of it. Now, information is sketchy, but anyway, they bombed these and damaged a good few planes. Russia has accepted they damaged a good few planes. The general view is it was an audacious plan. It was ingenious and all that, but it's not going to have much effect. And some experienced commentators said that it puts the onus on Russia to strike back now and give it a lot of bombing, a lot of attacks in Ukraine itself. So it looks like over the Christmas, you'll see this happening. So people talk to me about getting into the Christmas spirit. It's not very easy. It's not very easy. But anyway, so that's the story there. So just be aware of that. Now, what it has also done is push Trump's peace process back. It's a setback for Trump's peace process. Even though Ukrainians and Russians have met in Turkey recently, but still it pushes it back a bit. Now, one of the accusations that's been made against Europe is that when it tried to take the Russian assets, that the main reason was to take them out from under any negotiation. So Trump was going to have a deal which would include the frozen Russian assets, where Russia might agree, well, we'll not get them back, but we'll put them towards maybe reconstitution or the bit we have control of, or whatever. And of course, that's a red rag to the bull to Zelensky and to Europe. Do you understand that now? So in a peace process negotiated by America, the frozen assets would be part of the negotiations. And those negotiations would almost certainly concede Crimea, Donbass and Luhansk. But the Europeans didn't want that, and the Ukrainians certainly didn't want it. And as a result, Europe moved on those frozen assets. That's just one of the influences on that. So that's the story, folks. It could escalate bad. If it got bad, I mean, you'd see an Aristic missile, hypersonic missile, maybe landed into the port of London, or the port of Rotterdam, or the ports of Amsterdam. And if that happened, you'd disrupt global trade completely. You disrupt it completely. So that's all a possibility. That will have groundbreaking effects for trade. So you never know. We hope, keep the fingers crossed, and hope not. But anyway, that'll do. Now, just to finish on the other thing people want me to talk about is Venezuela. I mean, right, I think Venezuela should have its right to do what it likes. It's not playing the American ball, and America wants its oil, and Venezuela wants to deal with Russia and China, and they want their independence. And this is against the backdrop of a BRICS currency where they bypass the dollar. And there's no doubt, while Europe is panicking over Ukraine and the possible loss of the Ukraine war and the impact of that on the destruction of NATO would then have failed. What's its purpose? If Russia just stops and doesn't do any more, then what's the purpose of having NATO? It's mute, like, if you know what I mean. So many say that Putin is trying to take over all of Europe, and many say, no, he's not. But many do say, and I agree, the big panic is that the war would end. The need to keep this war going, because if this war ends and America slightly moves away from Europe, and Europe is left on its own, and you see the fighting between Macron and Merz, you could have a big disagreement between member states. So that's the geopolitical thing. I'm not saying whether that's going to happen or not, and I don't want to be a doomsday sayer. Now, on Venezuela, in the recent strategic report of America, you can see that they include trying to keep control of all of the Western Hemisphere, in other words, North and South America, and they're attacking ships. I don't think they're entitled to do that myself, but we have to deal with the real situation. It's a bit far away for Russia or China to act, but I would say that some of the ships of the Shadow Fleet are being attacked in the Baltic and around Sweden and Norway and that. And I could certainly see a situation where Russia would arm up a fake ship, and when it's attacked, attack the opposition and sink a NATO boat, gunboat. So we don't know how that'll go. Since the end of the Cold War, America could have possibly attacked Cuba, but didn't do it. So I don't know what's going to happen. There are talk of the Americans sending in boots on the ground, and that could be a nasty one. Venezuela has an awful lot of oil. So one of the things we can see is the whole climate change thing is kind of dead. And you had our President, Mary Robinson, meeting Greta Thunberg, a silly thing to do. And we're in Ireland are becoming irrelevant altogether, and that's not a big problem. I'm delighted with that. But the danger for Europe is that it's becoming irrelevant, and that's a big fear. So they're liable to act in ways that we can't predict, and we're better just sit back and watch it, and let the big wigs do all the videos from America and everywhere else. Meanwhile, that's the story in Venezuela. Will there be American invasion? Well, you could have a ship sunk, an oil disaster. You could have a ship sank or sunk, whichever it is. But I can't see Russia opening fire on America in the Caribbean or China, for the simple reason that it split the forces. If Russia were to attack or get into a war in the Caribbean with America, Russia would then not have the manpower to deal with the Ukraine. They've had a meeting with the Ukrainians, Russia has, about the exchange of prisoners and bodies and exchange of soldiers under 25 years of age. And that should serve as a warning to people everywhere what age the soldiers are. Now, have I dealt with that fairly good and brought you up to speed reasonably good? There's plenty of other stuff I can deal with. We just have to be careful. And I've made me videos, they're there now, and people can go back and watch them. There's no point in rehashing the same thing. And as I say, my own campaign is to change the political landscape of Ireland, and rehashing the same thing to people who believe me and are converted already is not going to do that. I need to get the other people to change their way of thinking, and particularly the 40% that don't vote at all. And surely you could bring out 10% of them. It'd make a big difference. So right, that's the story in a troubled world. I'm keeping away from local events, and we'll see you back soon. Comment underneath. Bye-bye.